My dad told guests I was built to struggle, so my sister didn't have to. He ordered me back to the garage I was renovating for free. I nodded, packed my tools, took the electrical panel keys, and left them in a house with zero power. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. I was leaning against the rough brickwork of the patio, trying to keep my knees from buckling. A sheen of cold sweat had broken out across my forehead, mixing with the layer of drywall dust that still clung to my hairline. I felt feverish, a deep, thrumming ache in my bones that I had been ignoring for 3 weeks straight, pushing through the pain because the deadline was absolute. My hands were a mess. My knuckles were swollen, wrapped in duct tape where the skin had split from handling rough lumber, and my fingernails were stained with wood stain and grease that no amount of scrubbing could remove. I looked like a wreck. I felt like a wreck. But I was standing there, holding a paper plate with nothing on it but a plastic fork, waiting for the signal that it was okay to sit down. The smell of slow-smoked brisket and caramelized barbecue sauce hung thick in the summer air, making my empty stomach cramp violently. I hadn't eaten since 5:00 a.m. It was now 4:00 p.m. My father, Frank, stood at the head of the long picnic table, holding court. He looked the picture of suburban success, polo shirt tucked into beige shorts, a beer in one hand, tongs in the other. Beside him sat my mother, Matilda, looking anxious but perfectly coiffed, her eyes darting around to ensure every guest's glass was full. And in the center of it all, reclining on a cushioned lounge chair like royalty, was my younger sister, Sophia. Sophia looked pristine. She was wearing a white sundress that would have been ruined if she stepped within 10 feet of the construction zone I had been living in for months. She was laughing, her head thrown back, accepting congratulations from our aunts and uncles. To Sophia, Frank bellowed, raising his beer. Finally coming home to roost, it's going to be a fresh start. A fresh start in a luxury apartment, my Aunt Linda chimed in, clapping her hands. It's so generous of you, Frank, to build that for her. I flinched. Frank didn't build it. Frank hadn't lifted a hammer since 1998. I shifted my weight, the work boots on my feet feeling like lead weights. I just wanted a piece of brisket, just one slice. Then I was going to go into the guest room, well, the room that used to be mine before I moved out, and sleep for 12 hours. Nancy. Frank's voice cut through the chatter like a whip crack. I straightened up, instinctively wiping my dusty hands on my jeans. Yeah, Dad, I rasped. My voice was hoarse from inhaling insulation fibers all morning. Come here, he motioned with the tongs, dripping sauce onto the patio pavers. Uncle Jerry doesn't believe me. I walked over, feeling the eyes of 20 family members on me. I felt small, dirty, and incredibly out of place. I stepped next to Sophia, creating a jarring visual contrast, the construction worker and the princess. Show them your hands, Frank commanded. I hesitated. What? Your hands, show Jerry. He reached out and grabbed my wrist, yanking my hand up. The sudden motion sent a jolt of pain through my injured shoulder, a rotator cuff tear I was pretty sure I'd aggravated hanging drywall yesterday. He displayed my hand like a carnival exhibit. The calluses were thick and yellowed. The cuts were angry red. The duct tape was peeling. Look at that, Frank laughed, a booming wet sound. That is a worker's hand. Rough, tough, ugly. The guests chuckled nervously. I tried to pull my hand back, but his grip was tight. Now look at this, he said, dropping my hand and gently lifting Sophia's. Her hand was soft, manicured with perfect French tips. This is a lady's hand. Soft, pristine. Dad, I'm tired, I said quietly, the humiliation starting to heat my face faster than the fever. Can I just get a plate? Frank dropped Sophia's hand and looked at me with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. He turned to the group, projecting his voice so everyone, even the neighbors, could hear. Nancy here, he pointed a thumb at me, she's built for this. Look at her shoulders, look at that stance. She's built to struggle. The silence on the patio was deafening. He turned to look at me directly, his eyes hard and cold. "You're built to struggle, Nancy, so your sister doesn't have to. That's the way the world works. Some are the mules, and some are the show ponies." I felt the blood drain from my face. My heart hammered against my ribs, a painful, irregular rhythm. "Is that a joke?" I whispered. Frank stopped smiling. He stepped closer, invading my personal space, smelling of beer and arrogance. "Do I look like I'm joking? Sophia needs that unit finished. The AC isn't hooked up yet. Why are you standing here looking for a handout when there's work waiting?" He pointed the tongs toward the detached garage, the structure I had spent every weekend for the last 6 months transforming into a high-end apartment. "Go on," he shooed me away like a stray dog. "Finish the wiring, then you can have a hot dog if there are any left." I looked at Matilda, my mother. She was staring intently at a potato salad bowl, refusing to meet my eyes. I looked at Sophia. She was smirking, taking a sip of her iced tea, looking at me with pure, unadulterated pity mixed with amusement. I looked down at my hands, the hands that had built the deck they were standing on, the hands that had re-roofed their house 3 years ago for free, the hands that were currently trembling not from weakness, but from a rage so pure it felt like molten lead in my veins. The betrayal hit me harder than the fever. It cut deeper than the exhaustion. It wasn't just that they didn't appreciate me. It was that they fundamentally viewed me as livestock, a utility, an object to be used up and discarded so the real child could shine. "Okay," I said. My voice was surprisingly steady. "Okay," Frank mocked. "Good, get to it." I turned around. I didn't head for the food. I didn't head for the house. I walked toward the garage. But as I walked away, the sound of their laughter ringing in my ears, I knew one thing for certain. The Frank and Sophia show was about to get canceled. The walk to the driveway felt miles long. Every step sent a shockwave of pain up my shins. My lower back was a knot of tension so tight it made it hard to take a deep breath. Behind me, the party noise resumed. I could hear the clinking of glasses and the murmur of conversation. They had already forgotten me. I was just the help, dismissed to the servants' quarters. I reached my truck, a battered, heavy-duty pickup that I kept meticulously maintained mechanically, even if the exterior had seen better days. It was parked right next to the detached garage. I stared at the garage. It wasn't really a garage anymore. It was a masterpiece. Over the last 6 months, I had gutted it. I had framed new walls, installed high-end insulation, hung and finished the drywall, laid down luxury vinyl plank flooring, and installed a custom kitchenette with granite countertops I had sourced from a demolition job at a fraction of the cost. I had done the plumbing. I had done the HVAC. And most critically, I was in the middle of the final electrical trim-out. I opened the door to the unit. The smell of fresh paint and sawdust, usually a scent that brought me satisfaction, now made me nauseous. I walked to the center of the room. My tools were scattered everywhere. My expensive cordless drills, my miter saw, my laser levels, my electrical testing equipment. Thousands of dollars of gear that I had brought over here to help family. "Built to struggle," I whispered to the empty room. I looked at the breaker panel on the wall. It was a sub-panel I had installed myself, feeding off the main line but controlled independently. It was a complex setup because the main house's electrical system was ancient. To make this work safely, I had to bypass several old circuits and create a completely new grounding system. I felt a tear slide down my dusty cheek, cutting a clean track through the grime. I wiped it away angrily. This wasn't the time for crying. This was the time for accounting. I pulled out my phone. I had a text from Sophia, sent 10 minutes ago, while I was standing right in front of her. "Sophia, don't forget to install the dimmer switches in the bedroom. I don't want harsh lighting. Also, make sure you clean up your dust before you leave. I'm moving boxes in tomorrow." I stared at the screen, not a thank you, not a sorry dad is being a jerk, just orders. My mother, Matilda, had called me 3 days ago. I remembered the conversation vividly. I had told her I was sick, that I needed a weekend off. "Oh, Nancy, don't be selfish," Matilda had sighed, her voice dripping with that passive-aggressive disappointment she perfected. "Sophia is so stressed about not having her own space. She needs this. You're strong, you can push through, you always do." "You're strong," that was their code word. It didn't mean resilient. It meant exploitable. It meant I didn't require maintenance or love or care. I was just a machine that ran on guilt. I looked around the beautiful apartment one last time. It was worth at least $2,000 a month in rent in this market. And they were giving it to Sophia for free, while I paid a mortgage on a modest townhouse across town and worked 60-hour weeks. I took a deep breath, and the feverish haze in my brain seemed to clear, replaced by a cold, crystalline focus. I reached into my tool belt and pulled out my heavy-duty linesman pliers. "Okay, Dad," I said softly. "You want work, I'll give you work." I didn't destroy anything. That would be childish, and I was a professional. Destruction was for amateurs. Deconstruction, however, was part of the job. I began to pack. I didn't just pack my tools. I packed everything that legally belonged to me. The uninstalled light fixtures I had bought with my own credit card because Frank forgot his wallet at the hardware store, into the truck. The 5 gallons of high-end paint sitting in the corner, into the truck. The box of expensive dimmer switches Sophia wanted so badly, into the truck. I moved with a manic energy, ignoring the screaming protest of my muscles. I loaded the truck bed until the suspension sagged. Then I walked to the electrical panel. This was the kill switch. Because the house had such old wiring, the new connection required a specific, heavy-duty bridge I had fabricated. It was the only thing linking the grid to this building, and honestly, to the back half of the main house, because of how I had to reroute the load to prevent a fire. I flipped the main breaker. Clunk, the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchenette died. The silence was absolute. I took out my lockout/tagout kit, a safety device electricians use to ensure no one can turn the power back on while they are working. I slapped a heavy, red padlock through the breaker switch. I locked it. I put the only key in my pocket. Then I did something even more permanent. I disconnected the neutral bar bonding screw. It's a small, distinct piece of metal. Without it, the circuit is open. Even if they cut my lock, nothing would work. It would take a master electrician hours to figure out why the system was dead. I walked out of the garage and locked the door. Then I remembered the permits. I had pulled the building and electrical permits under my general contractor license. As the license holder, I was legally responsible for the site. If I wasn't the one doing the work, the site was non-compliant. I pulled out my phone, logged into the city's building portal, and hit Withdraw Permit. A confirmation box popped up. "Are you sure? This will issue an immediate stop work order for the address." I tapped yes. They had forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't just the labor. I was the liability insurance, and I had just canceled the policy. To understand why this moment was so nuclear, you have to understand the ecosystem of my family. I am 32. I have been working in construction since I was 18. I started sweeping floors for a drywall crew and worked my way up. I got my journeyman's license, then my master, then my GC license. I own my own small firm now. I employ 6 guys. I have a reputation in this town for being on time, under budget, and obsessively detailed. But to Frank and Matilda, I was just handy. Growing up, if the sink leaked, Nancy fixed it. If the fence blew down, Nancy dug the post holes. I was the son Frank never had, but without the respect a son would have garnered. Sophia, on the other hand, was the dream. She was 26, beautiful and completely incapable of functioning as an adult. She had bounced between 3 majors in college, paid for by Frank, dropped out to become an influencer, funded by Matilda, and was currently finding herself after a bad breakup. The breakup was the catalyst for the garage project. Sophia had moved back home, but she couldn't possibly live in her old bedroom. It was too stifling for her creative process. So Frank had the brilliant idea. "Nancy, why don't you fix up the old carriage house? It'll be a nice project for you. Good practice." Practice? I had built custom homes from the ground up, and he called it practice. But I agreed. Why? Because I wanted them to love me. It's pathetic to admit, but I thought if I built them this perfect thing, if I saved them the $80,000 it would cost to hire a contractor, they would finally look at me and say, "Wow, Nancy is amazing. We are so proud of her." Instead, I got, "You're built to struggle." I sat in the driver's seat of my truck, the engine idling. The AC blasted against my sweaty face. I watched them through the windshield. Frank was laughing at something Uncle Jerry said, slapping him on the back. Frank was a retired insurance adjuster. He spent his entire life looking for ways to deny people what they were owed. He carried that energy into his parenting. He was a man who believed that affection was a zero-sum game. If he gave any to me, he'd have less for Sophia. He was polished, though. He had that silver fox look, the firm handshake, the booming voice that commanded attention. He loved to play the benevolent patriarch. This barbecue was his stage. He was showing off his largesse. "Look at this apartment I am providing for my daughter," while completely erasing the person who actually built it. And then there was Sophia. She was walking toward the house now, probably to use the bathroom, since the one in the garage was locked. She moved with an airy entitlement that made my teeth ache. She had never worked a physical job in her life. She didn't know what it felt like to have your back seize up or to have dust in your lungs. She paused by the patio door and said something to Matilda. Matilda nodded frantically and handed Sophia her own glass of wine. Matilda was the classic enabler. She wasn't malicious like Frank, but she was weak. She would watch Frank mentally dismantle me and then tell me later, "Oh, you know how he is. He doesn't mean it. Just apologize so we can have peace." Peace, their peace was built on my silence. Their luxury was built on my labor. I watched Frank point at the garage again. He was clearly telling someone else about the work waiting for me. He looked toward where my truck was parked, expecting to see me marching back into the garage with my head down, obedient and broken. Instead, he saw my brake lights flare red. I saw his brow furrow. He took a step forward, confused. He expected compliance. He banked on it. He had invested 32 years in training me to take the scraps and say thank you. I shifted the truck into drive. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Matilda. "Matilda, Dad says you're taking too long. People are asking for a tour of the apartment. Hurry up." I didn't reply. I dropped the phone into the cup holder. I eased the truck down the long driveway. As I passed the patio, Frank saw me. His eyes went wide. He raised his arms in a "what the hell are you doing?" gesture. He shouted something, but the windows were up. I didn't wave. I didn't look back. I turned onto the main road and punched the gas. The heavy load in the back rattled, a symphony of steel and tools that sounded like freedom. I was done building their castle. It was time to build my fortress. The drive to my townhouse was a blur of adrenaline and autopilot. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white, the vibration of the road traveling up my arms and settling into the deep ache of my shoulders. I didn't turn on the radio. I needed the silence. I needed to hear the thoughts that had been screaming in the back of my mind for years, the ones I had drowned out with the noise of chop saws and air compressors. When I finally pulled into my driveway, the sun was beginning to set, casting long, bruised shadows across my small, neatly manicured lawn. I killed the engine and just sat there for a moment, the silence of the cabin rushing in to fill the space where Frank's laughter had been. I looked at my phone, 14 missed calls, 6 from Matilda, 8 from Frank, 2 texts from Sophia. I didn't unlock the screen. Instead, I walked into my house, my sanctuary. It was small, just a 2-bedroom unit, but it was mine. I had tiled the floors myself. I had installed the crown molding. Every inch of this place was a testament to my skill, not my struggle. I walked straight to the bathroom and turned the shower on as hot as it would go. I stripped off my work clothes, the dusty jeans, the sweat-stained shirt, the heavy boots, and threw them into the corner. I stood under the scalding water and scrubbed. I scrubbed the drywall dust from my hair. I scrubbed the grease from my arms. I scrubbed until my skin was raw, trying to wash away the feeling of Frank's hand gripping my wrist, displaying me like livestock. Built to struggle. The words echoed in the tiled shower. He hadn't just insulted me, he had defined me. In his mind, my suffering was the fuel for Sophia's comfort. It was a parasitic ecosystem, and I was the host. I stepped out of the shower, wrapped myself in a plush robe, and walked to my home office. I wasn't just a daughter hurt by her daddy's mean words. I was a business owner. I was a licensed general contractor, and I had just been fired from a job site. It was time to do the paperwork. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. The blue light of the screen illuminated the room. I logged into my project management software. I opened the file labeled Parents, Carriage House Reno. Usually for family, I didn't track hours for billing. I tracked them for schedule, but I had the data. I knew exactly who was on site and when. I knew every screw, every wire, every sheet of plywood. I started a new document, Invoice 2020-4001. I began to type. Project Management and General Contracting Services. 180 hours at 125/HR. Skilled labor, electrical, framing, HVAC. 240 hours at 95/HR. Materials purchased, reimbursement pending. $14,500. Expedited permit fees, $1,200. Emergency call-out fee weekend holiday, waived. I paused at the waived line. I hit backspace. Emergency call-out fee, $450. The total at the bottom of the page was staggering, $58,950. That was the market value of the gift I was giving them. That was the struggle I was donating so Sophia could have her fresh start. I saved the PDF, I didn't send it yet. An invoice is just a request. I needed leverage. I logged into the city's permitting portal again to confirm the status. The screen flashed, status, withdrawn/stop work order pending. Good, but I knew Frank. He would try to hire a handyman or a scab electrician to bypass the lockout and finish the job off the books. He wouldn't care about code. He just wanted the lights on, and Sophia moved in. I needed to make sure that was impossible. I dug through my physical file cabinet and pulled out the original agreement. It wasn't a formal contract. We were family, after all, but it was a signed authorization allowing me to pull permits on their property. Crucially, because I had purchased the materials up front with the promise of reimbursement when the refinance goes through, I had technically acted as a lender. I opened a browser tab and navigated to the county clerk's website. I searched for mechanic's lien. In our state, a contractor has 90 days from the last day of work to file a lien if they haven't been paid. I had worked today. The clock had just started. A mechanic's lien is a nuclear weapon in real estate. It clouds the title. It means they can't sell, refinance, or borrow against the property until I am paid. If Frank had any plans to leverage the house equity, which he often did, this would freeze him cold. I began to fill out the digital preliminary notice. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Name of property owner, Frank and Matilda Miller. Legal description, Lot 4, Block B, Oakwood Estates. Claimant, Nancy Miller Construction, LLC. I printed the form. I would file it first thing Monday morning at the courthouse. I sat back, the adrenaline finally settling into a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't just hurt, I was armed. My phone rang again. It was 8:45 p.m. The party should have been winding down, the sun long gone. I looked at the caller ID, Dad. I took a deep breath. I picked up the phone, but I didn't answer with, "Hi, Dad." "This is Nancy," I said, my voice professional, flat, stripped of any daughterly warmth. "What the hell did you do?" Frank's voice exploded through the speaker. He wasn't just angry, he was panicked. I could hear background noise, confusion, people talking loudly, someone tripping over something. I left, Frank, I said. You told me there was work waiting. I decided I didn't want the job. You killed the power, he screamed. The whole back of the house is dark. The patio lights are out. The fridge in the mudroom, the beer is warm. Uncle Jerry nearly broke his neck on the steps. Ah, I said calmly. That makes sense. As I explained to you last week, the sub-panel in the garage feeds the exterior lighting circuit and the mudroom overflow because of the way the neutral load was balanced. When I locked out the panel for safety, those circuits de-energized. Come back here and fix it. Now. It wasn't a request. It was an order, delivered with the same tone he used to tell me to mow the lawn when I was 12. I can't do that, I said. What do you mean you can't? You're 10 minutes away. Get in your truck, get your ass back here, and flip the switch. It's not that simple, I explained, leaning back in my office chair. I withdrew the permits, Frank. As of 5:00 p.m. today, that garage is an unpermitted construction zone. I removed the bonding screw and locked the breaker. Legally, I cannot re-energize that site without a past inspection. If I do, I lose my license. There was a silence on the other end, a stunned, heavy silence. You withdrew the permits, he whispered. I did. I also resigned as the general contractor of record. You ungrateful little brat, he hissed, the venom returning instantly. After everything we've done for you, we let you use that garage for practice. We gave you exposure. Exposure doesn't pay my mortgage, Frank, I cut in, my voice sharpening. And neither do you. Speaking of which, I just emailed you an invoice. Invoice? He laughed, a manic, incredulous sound. You think I'm paying you? You walked off the job. You ruined Sophia's party. She's crying in her room because she can't move in on Monday. She can't move in on Monday because the building has no certificate of occupancy, I said. And if she tries to move in, I'll report the property to code enforcement as an illegal dwelling. The fines start at $500 a day. You wouldn't, he challenged. You wouldn't do that to your sister. She needs this, Nancy. You know she can't afford rent anywhere else. Why are you doing this? Because I made a joke? You're really going to blow up the family over a joke. It wasn't a joke, I said quietly. You said I was built to struggle. You said I was the mule. Well, the mule kicked down the barn, Dad. The invoice is for $58,950. That covers materials and labor. If it's not paid within 30 days, I'm filing a lien on the house. You listen to me, Frank lowered his voice, the menace dripping from every syllable. You come back, Ray tomorrow, turn the power on, and finish that apartment, or you are dead to us. I will write you out of the will. I will tell everyone in this town what a petty, jealous, incompetent failure you are. I'm sure you will, I said, but you'll do it in the dark. Goodbye, Frank. I hung up. My hand was trembling again, but this time, it wasn't from fear. It was the aftershock of finally severing the limb that had been poisoning me for decades. I looked at the phone. He called back immediately. I let it go to voicemail. Then Matilda called, voicemail, then Sophia. I turned the phone off. I walked into my living room and poured myself a glass of wine. I sat on my couch, in my quiet, well-lit house, and took a sip. For the first time in my life, I wasn't wondering how to fix their problems. I was wondering how they were going to survive mine. Monday morning arrived with a gray, drizzling sky that matched the mood of the impending war. I didn't go to my usual job site. I went to the courthouse. I filed the preliminary notice for the lien at 9:00 a.m. sharp. The clerk stamped it with a heavy thud that felt more satisfying than any hammer blow I had ever struck. By 10:00 a.m., I was back in my truck, parked 3 houses down from my parents' place. I needed to see it. I needed to confirm that the city had done its job. Sure enough, a white city truck was parked in the driveway. A large, bright orange sticker was plastered on the garage door, "Stop work order." I watched as the inspector, a guy named Dave I knew from other jobs, talked to Frank in the driveway. Frank was waving his arms, pointing at the house, clearly trying to charm or bully his way out of it. Dave just shook his head, pointed at the sticker, and handed Frank a citation. Frank looked small. From this distance, without his audience, without his podium, he just looked like an angry old man yelling at the rain. My phone buzzed. It wasn't family. It was an email notification from my bank. Alert, credit inquiry detected. I frowned. I opened the app. A hard pull on my credit report had been initiated by a local lumber yard. That didn't make sense. I hadn't ordered anything. I called the lumber yard immediately. "Hey, this is Nancy Miller. I just got a credit alert." "Oh, hi, Nancy," the manager, Steve, said cheerily. "Yeah, your dad is here. He's trying to put through a big order for the carriage house. Drywall, wiring, new fixtures. He said to put it on your account like usual. I was just running the authorization." My blood ran cold. "Steve, do not authorize that transaction." "What? He has your card number written down on a piece of paper." "That is unauthorized use," I said, my voice steel. "Frank Miller is not an authorized user on my business account. If you run that card, I will dispute the charge as fraud and I will file a police report." "Whoa, okay, Steve stammered. "I'm stopping it. He's standing right here, Nancy. He says you're confused." "Put him on speaker, Steve," I said. I heard the phone shuffle. "Nancy," Frank's voice was sickly sweet, designed to fool the manager. "Honey, you must have forgotten to unlock the card. I'm just getting the things needed to finish up for Sophia." "Steve," I said loudly and clearly, "I am the license holder. That job site has a stop work order on it. If you sell him building materials for that address, you are aiding in unpermitted work. And if you charge my card, I will press charges for theft." There was a long pause. "Mr. Miller," Steve's voice was much less friendly now, "I can't help you. You need to leave." "This is ridiculous," Frank sputtered. "She's my daughter. It's family money." Family money. The phrase triggered a memory. 6 months ago, when we started this, Frank had asked me to create a project scope document with estimated costs. He said he needed it for Grandma's trust to release the funds for the renovation. He had said the trust would pay for the materials, and he would pay me for labor out of pocket later. I had given him an estimate of $60,000. I hung up on the lumber yard and drove straight to the county records office. If there was a trust disbursement, it would be private. But if there was a loan, a HELOC, it would be public record. I sat at the public terminal and searched for my parents' property deeds. There it was, a home equity line of credit opened 7 months ago. Amount, $100,000. Lender, First National Bank. Purpose, gleaned from the attached affidavit. Accessory dwelling unit construction and improvements. I stared at the screen. Frank hadn't just expected me to work for free. He had borrowed $100,000 against the house specifically to pay for the construction. He had the money. He had the cash sitting in an account somewhere. He had drawn down the loan, claiming to the bank that he was paying a contractor. But he hadn't paid me a dime. Where did the money go? I pulled up Sophia's Instagram. I scrolled back 6 months. New car day, thanks Daddy. Blessed, a photo of a brand new Audi Q3. Paris trip with the girls, Euro summer. My new luxury unboxing, designer bags. The realization hit me like a physical blow to the gut. Frank had taken out a construction loan on the house, used my license and my labor to validate the loan's purpose to the bank, and then funneled the cash directly to Sophia to fund her lifestyle, while I inhaled insulation dust and destroyed my back. I wasn't just the mule. I was the laundering operation. I printed the deed of trust. I printed the HELOC documents. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number for the fraud department of First National Bank. "Hello," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and vindication. "My name is Nancy Miller. I am the general contractor listed on a renovation project funded by your bank. I'm calling to report that the funds have been misappropriated. The contractor has not been paid, and the permit for the project has been withdrawn. The woman on the line paused. Do you have proof of this, Ms. Miller? I have the invoices, the withdrawn permits, and the mechanic's lien I just filed, I said. And I have photos of the homeowner's daughter driving the construction costs around town. I see, the woman said, her tone shifting to serious professional alertness. We take construction fraud very seriously. Let me transfer you to our investigation unit. I waited on hold, listening to the soft jazz music. It was the sweetest song I had ever heard. Frank wanted a struggle. He was about to get a federal one. 2 days after my call to the bank, the summons arrived. It wasn't a court order, but in my family, it carried the same weight. It was a text from Aunt Linda, the matriarch of the extended family and the one person Frank feared offending. Linda, Thursday, 6:00 p.m., my house, dinner. We are going to settle this family dispute before it gets any uglier. Be there, Nancy. I knew what this was. It was an ambush. Frank had gotten to Linda, spun his tale of the ungrateful, mentally unstable daughter who was blackmailing her poor, elderly parents. They wanted to get me into a room, surround me with concerned relatives, and bully me until I unlocked the electrical panel and withdrew the lien. I prepared for it not like a dinner, but like a deposition. I spent Wednesday night assembling the red binder. I organized the printed emails, the texts, the permit history, the invoice, the lien filing, and most damning of all, the bank documents and Sophia's social media timeline. I tabbed every page. I highlighted the numbers in neon yellow. When I pulled up to Aunt Linda's house on Thursday, I saw Frank's car in the driveway. Sophia's Audi, the one bought with construction materials, was parked right behind it. I took a deep breath, grabbed the binder, and walked in. The living room was arranged like a tribunal. Frank and Matilda sat on the love seat, holding hands, looking like tragic victims of a natural disaster. Sophia sat on the floor by their feet, wiping at dry eyes with a tissue. Aunt Linda and Uncle Jerry sat in the armchairs, looking stern. Sit down, Nancy, Linda said, pointing to a hard wooden chair placed in the center of the room, facing them. I'll stand, thanks, I said, clutching the binder to my chest. Nancy, look at your mother, Frank started, his voice trembling with a theatrical sadness that made my stomach turn. She hasn't slept in 3 days. She's sick with worry. How can you do this? How can you blackmail your own flesh and blood? It's not blackmail, Dad, I said calmly. It's a bill. It's extortion, Uncle Jerry cut in. Frank showed us the texts. You're asking for $60,000 for a garage you volunteered to build. That's not how family works, Nancy. You don't charge your father for labor. I didn't charge him for labor initially, I said, looking Jerry in the eye. I agreed to do the work to help out, but the terms of that agreement changed when I was told, to my face, in front of all of you, that my role in this family is to suffer so she can succeed. I pointed at Sophia. It was a joke, Sophia screamed, suddenly finding her voice. Oh my God, you are so sensitive. You're ruining my life because of a joke. Is the lien a joke? I asked. You are going to remove that lien, Frank said, his voice dropping into that low, dangerous register he used when he was about to lose control. You are going to remove it tonight, or so help me God, Nancy, you will have no family left. We will cut you off. No Christmases, no birthdays, nothing. I looked around the room. I saw Matilda nodding in agreement, terrified of Frank, but willing to sacrifice me to keep him calm. I saw Aunt Linda looking at me with disappointment. You're right, Frank, I said. I should explain why I filed the lien. Uncle Jerry, you know a bit about banking, right? Jerry frowned. I was a loan officer for 30 years. RS, what does that have to do with anything? Great, I walked over and handed him the red binder. Open to tab 1. What is this? Frank snapped, starting to rise. Sit down, Frank, I barked. The command was so sharp, so authoritative, my job site voice, that he actually sat back down, stunned. Tab 1, I told Jerry. That is the deed of trust for the home equity line of credit Frank took out on the house 7 months ago. How much is that for? Jerry adjusted his glasses. $100,000. The room went quiet. Matilda stiffened. Tab 2, I continued. The affidavit of purpose. What does Frank say that money is for? Construction and renovation of accessory dwelling unit, Jerry read. He looked up confused. Okay, so he borrowed the money to build the garage. Exactly, I said. He borrowed 100 grand to pay for the construction. Now, tab 3, that is my estimate. $60,000. That leaves $40,000 in contingency. I turned to look at Frank. He was pale. A bead of sweat was tracking down his temple. Now, Jerry, look at tab 4, I said. Those are the bank draws. Frank pulled out the full $100,000 over the last 6 months. He told the bank he was paying the contractor. But, Jerry looked at me, then at Frank. He didn't pay you. Not a dime, I said. I bought the lumber. I bought the wire. I bought the drywall. I put it on my credit cards, expecting to be reimbursed. So, if the bank gave Frank $100,000 to pay me and he didn't pay me, where is the money? I didn't wait for an answer. Tab 5, Jerry. Jerry flipped the page. It was a collage of Sophia's Instagram posts, matched with the dates of the bank withdrawals. February 4th, bank releases $25,000, I narrated. February 6th, Sophia posts new car day, price of a 2024 Audi Q3, approximately $42,000. March 15th, bank releases $15,000. March 17th, Sophia is in Paris at the Four Seasons. That's a lie, Sophia shrieked, jumping up. I bought that with my influencer money. Your tax returns are public record in the discovery phase of a lawsuit, Sophia, I said coldly. Do you want to go there? Because I'm pretty sure influencer money doesn't cover a $40,000 car when you have 3,000 followers. I turned back to the room. The silence was absolute. It was heavy, suffocating, and thick with the realization of what had actually happened. Frank didn't just ask me to work for free, I said, my voice shaking slightly now that the adrenaline was peaking. He committed bank fraud. He used my license, my credentials, and my project to secure a federal loan. Then he embezzled those funds to spoil Sophia, while telling me I was built to struggle and mocking my hands. I looked at my mother. Did you know, Mom? Did you know the kitchen renovation money went to her purse collection? Matilda looked at the floor, tears streaming down her face. She knew, she had always known. That's enough, Frank roared. He lunged out of his seat, knocking the coffee table askew. Give me that. He tried to grab the binder from Jerry. Jerry, who was younger and fitter than Frank, stood up and held the binder out of reach. Sit down, Frank, Jerry said, his voice disgusted. Is this true? Did you spend the loan on the girl and stiff Nancy? It's my money, Frank yelled, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. It's my house. I can do what I want. Nancy doesn't need it. She has a business. She's greedy. It's not your money, Frank, Jerry shouted back. It's the bank's money, and you signed a document stating it was for construction. If you spent it on cars and vacations, that is criminal fraud, and you dragged Nancy into it. Frank froze. The word criminal hung in the air. I called the bank, Dad, I said softly. Frank's head snapped toward me. His eyes were wide, filled with a sudden, dawning horror. You what? I called the fraud department on Monday, I said. I told them the contractor hasn't been paid and the funds were misappropriated. They are opening an investigation. The stop work order is already in the system. When they send an inspector out to see a half-finished shell and realize you drew down the full loan amount. Well. You traitor, Frank whispered. He looked like he was going to vomit. You destroyed us. They'll call the loan. We don't have the cash to pay it back. Then I guess you'll have to sell the Audi, I said, and maybe the house. How could you? Sophia cried, stomping her foot like a child. You're just jealous. You've always been jealous of me. Jealous, I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Sophia, look at you. You're 26, you have no job, no skills, and your luxury apartment is a crime scene. I own my own company. I own my own home. I'm not jealous. I'm exhausted. And I'm done. I walked to the door. I paused and looked back at them, my family. A tableau of greed and enabling. The invoice stands, I said. The lien stays until I am paid in full. If the bank forecloses on you first, I'll get in line with the other creditors. Good luck, Frank. You've got work waiting. I walked out into the cool evening air. I could hear shouting erupting behind me inside the house. Uncle Jerry yelling at Frank, Sophia screaming at everyone. I got into my truck, started the engine, and didn't look back. The downfall was not swift. It was a slow, grinding collapse that took 6 months to fully play out. The bank moved faster than I expected. Once I provided the documentation proving the stop work order and the lack of payment, they froze the line of credit immediately. They sent their own auditor to the property within the week. The auditor found exactly what I said he would: a structure that was barely 60% complete, despite 100% of the funds being withdrawn. Because Frank had signed affidavits swearing the work was done to release the funds, the bank classified the loan as fraudulent. They exercised the acceleration clause, demanding immediate repayment of the full $100,000 principal. Frank didn't have it. He had spent it on Sophia, on credit card debt, on maintaining the illusion of being a wealthy patriarch. I heard the details through Aunt Linda, who had become my only conduit to the family. They listed the house yesterday, Linda told me over the phone about 2 months after the confrontation. Her voice was tired. The bank gave them 30 days to liquidate before they initiate foreclosure proceedings. And Sophia? I asked, looking out the window of my office at a new job site, a custom library I was building for a client who actually respected me. Sophia is adjusting, Linda said diplomatically. She sold the Audi. Frank made her. It didn't cover the gap, though. She's living in the guest room at Matilda's sister's place in Ohio for now. She's working as a receptionist at a dental office. Good, I said. She has soft hands. She'll be fine. Matilda wants to see you, Nancy, Linda added softly, before they move into the condo. No, I said firmly. I can't, Linda. She's your mother. She watched him humiliate me for 30 years and handed him the ammunition, I said. She's not a victim, Linda. She's an accomplice. Tell her I wish her luck, but I'm not coming. I hung up. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But it was the kind of pain you feel when a bone is set properly, sharp but necessary for healing. The house sold 4 months later. The market was cooling, and with the cloud on the title from my mechanic's lien, the buyers had to deal with me first. I remember the day the escrow officer called me. Ms. Miller, we are preparing to close on the Oakwood property. We have your lien on file for $58,950 plus accrued interest and legal fees. We need a payoff statement. I sent it over. The total came to $64,200. Because the lien is a secured debt attached to the land, I got paid before Frank and Matilda saw a penny of the equity. The bank took their cut to pay off the fraudulent loan. The realtors took their cut. I took mine. By the time the dust settled, Frank and Matilda walked away from their estate with almost nothing. They moved into a 2-bedroom rental apartment 3 towns over. Frank's reputation in the neighborhood was shattered, small towns talk, and Uncle Jerry had made sure the truth about the bank fraud circulated to correct the narrative Frank tried to spin. I received the check on a Tuesday. I held it in my hands. It wasn't just money, it was validation. It was the physical manifestation of my worth returned to me. I used the money to pay off the debts I'd incurred for their project. I bought a new work van for my company, and I booked a trip. Not to Paris, that wasn't my style. I booked a 2-week hiking trip in Patagonia. Just me, the mountains, and the silence. The night before I left, I drove past the old house one last time. The new owners were already there. I saw a contractor's truck in the driveway, one of my competitors actually. a good guy. He was hauling drywall into the garage. I saw the lights on in the main house. It looked warm. It looked normal. It was just a house. It wasn't a shrine to Frank's ego anymore. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. It was a text from a number I didn't have saved, but I knew who it was. Unknown, I hope you're happy, you won. Dad. I looked at the message. I thought about typing back. I thought about telling him that I wasn't happy that they lost their home, but I was proud that I saved myself. I thought about telling him that he did this, not me. Instead, I deleted the message. Then, I blocked the number. I am happy, I said to the empty truck cab. I put the truck in gear and drove away. I had a flight to catch, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying anyone else's baggage. I was just carrying my own, and I was strong enough to handle it.